Right. Hello, thanks for joining us. I'm Anne-Marie O'Kane. I work for the Centre for Cross-Border Studies. I manage the BorderPeople project. As you might know, we aim to gather up information that might be useful to people who live on the island of Ireland, especially those people who live in the border region, people who cross the border occasionally, sometimes very regularly, our cross-border workers, our shoppers, our students, many others. The UK's exit from the EU will have many practical implications for people living here, and today we're going to focus on one of them. We're going to focus on the UK's EU settlement scheme, which safeguards the rights for some people to remain living in Northern Ireland if they're not British or Irish citizens. Fiona Pryor from Advice A&I joins me today, and she's going to give us a quick tour of the settlement scheme. What is it? Who is it relevant to? How to apply and where to go for help if it's needed. So Fiona, thanks so much for joining us, and the floor is yours. Tell us more about the scheme.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Yes, I work at Advice A&I. Specifically, I work on the complex cases. So we have a few different advisors that deal with the more straightforward cases. And then if there's anything that's a little bit more complex, it gets sent to me. I'm here just to give you a quick tour, basically, of the EU settlement scheme. And I'll just share my screen here for you now, and I will start the presentation, give you a bit of an overview of the scheme and who can apply. So the EU settlement scheme is all about protecting your rights after Brexit. Let's go to the next one. So if you're an EU, EEA or Swiss citizen, you and your family can apply to the EU settlement scheme, and this is so you can continue living in the UK after the 30th of June 2021. There is another deadline though that has just passed, and that was the 31st of December 2020. So if you were already living here before the 31st of December 2020, then you can apply. You can also apply if you're the family member of an eligible person of Northern Ireland. And there's circumstances that you don't need to apply, such as if you are an Irish citizen or if you already have indefinite leave to remain. If you are a UK citizen, so if you hold a British passport, you actually can't apply, and that's just because you don't need to. So who needs to apply to the EU settlement scheme? There's a few different types of people that actually absolutely have to apply. So if you're an EU, EEA or Swiss citizen, you must apply. Also, if you're not an EU, EEA or Swiss citizen, but your family member is. If you're not an EU, EEA or Swiss citizen, but your family member is an eligible person of Northern Ireland. If you have a UK permanent residence document. If you're the family member of an EU, EEA or Swiss citizen who doesn't need to apply, for example, if they're a UK or Irish citizen, and then children as well, which are they go on separate applications, but you can link their application to yours so that they get the same outcome as you. Another person that isn't listed there is if you have a derivative residence card, you have to apply to the EU settlement scheme as well. Who does not need to apply? So you don't need to worry about the EU settlement scheme if you have indefinite leave to enter the UK, indefinite leave to remain in the UK, Irish citizenship or British citizenship, or indeed if you're a dual citizen, which a lot of people are on the island of Ireland. Other categories of people who don't need to apply are people who work in the UK that don't live here. If you live in the Republic of Ireland and work in Northern Ireland, those who fall into that category are actually going to apply for something different that's called the Frontier Worker Permit, and it launched on the 10th of December 2020. And anyone as well who's exempt from immigration control, like foreign diplomats, they don't need to apply to the EU settlement scheme. So if you're not an EU, EEA or Swiss citizen, you might be wondering how you can apply to the EU settlement scheme. And there's a lot of different ways that you can apply still. If you're a family member of an EU, EEA or Swiss citizen, if you're the family member of a British citizen and you lived outside the UK in an EEA country together, if you're the family member of a British citizen who also has EU, EEA or Swiss citizenship and who lived in the UK as an EU, EEA or Swiss citizen before getting British citizenship, if you used to have an EU, EEA or Swiss family member living in the UK, if you're the family member of an eligible person of Northern Ireland, if you're the primary carer of a British EU, EEA or Swiss citizen, if you're the child of an EU, EEA or Swiss citizen who used to live and work in the UK, or the child's primary carer, if your marriage or civil partnership with an EU, EEA or Swiss citizen has ended with a divorce, annulment or dissolution and you lived in the UK when it ended, And if your family relationship with an EU, EEA or Swiss citizen has broken down permanently because of domestic abuse or violence. And it's worth noting for that last point that this extends beyond the husband and wife relationship to include many other different types of family members. So it opens up that for anybody who's been a victim. Now, something that's very relevant in Northern Ireland at the minute is for family members of eligible persons of Northern Ireland. You can apply if your family member is this type of person, whether you're an EU, EEA or Swiss citizen or not. So to be eligible, the person of Northern Ireland has to hit all of these different bullet points. They have to be a British, Irish or dual citizen. They have to have been born in Northern Ireland, and at the time of their birth, they have to have had at least one parent who held British, Irish or dual citizenship or was without any restriction on their period of residence, and they had to have been living in the UK by the 31st of December 2020. So what evidence do you need to apply to the EU settlement scheme? There's two things you need to be able to prove to the Home Office, and that's your identity and your residence in the UK. So in terms of your identity, if you're an EU, EEA or Swiss citizen, you have to have a valid passport or a valid national identity card. You'll also be asked to provide a digital photograph of your face. So in terms of valid passports and valid national identity cards, some countries have actually extended the validity on these pieces of documentation. So you can obviously contact us so we can advise you on whether, if you have an expired passport or an expired identity card, we can advise you if it actually lasts longer than the specified date on the card. And there are other ways as well to get around this, which we can deal with. And myself personally, I deal with more complicated cases involving identity cards and passports that have expired. If you're not an EU, EEA or Swiss citizen, you have to provide a valid passport, a valid biometric residence card or a valid biometric residence permit, as well as the digital photograph of your face as well. And if you don't currently have a biometric residence card or permit, you're going to have to provide your fingerprints also. This is just a very standard way that the Home Office deals with these types of applications and have always done. If you're applying on the basis of your relationship with a family member, you also have to provide proof that you are related to that family member. So a birth certificate, marriage certificate, adoption certificate, anything like that. And then secondly, it's on to residence in the UK. So when you apply to the EU settlement scheme, you don't have to provide evidence of your entire residency, just enough to show that you qualify for either settled or pre-settled status. So pre-settled status is that whenever you've lived in the UK for less than 5 years. So you only need to provide one document dated in the last 6 months to actually be granted pre-settled status. 1 day is all you need to be granted that. But obviously, if you want to prove a longer period to get you closer to the 5 years, then you want to show everything that you possibly can. So suitable documentation that you can use are things like bank statements showing UK transactions, tenancy agreements, pay slips, any kind of bills, hospital appointments, letters, anything with a single date on it. That will just provide proof of 1 day. There are some types of documents that, even though there's one date on the letter, they provide proof for a month, but these are very specific documents which we can advise you on if you have other documentation. You should always try and provide the maximum amount of residency possible, because if you've lived here for a longer period of time, you want your status to reflect that. But other documents that evidence longer periods of time are things like annual bank statements, council tax or rates bills, employers' letters, P60s and P45s, mortgage statements, anything like that, anything official, and you can upload a maximum of 10 documents on the system. So settled status is continuous residence of 5 years or more. So if you're trying to show 5 years continuous residence, obviously that's quite a long period of time. So try and show documents that do reflect longer periods of time. If you've been working here and you have a national insurance number, or you've been receiving benefits, then your national insurance number should actually reflect your residency. So it might be that the national insurance number is all you need or very little more. Other things that you can use, however, are university letters or certificates if you've gone to university here, rental agreements again, employers' letters and doctors' letters stating how long you've been registered or employed at a particular company, mortgage statements and annual bank statements. If you don't have a national insurance number, there's, because of COVID-19, I know there were a lot of difficulties with people getting national insurance numbers. You can still apply for both pre-settled and settled status. This isn't something that bars you from applying, it's just that you'll need to show alternative documentation if you haven't got one. So anything that I've mentioned before is still suitable without a national insurance number. The only thing that really isn't suitable are things that you would look at yourself and think they're not very official documents. So things like photographs and videos, letters or references from family and friends, postcards, birthday cards, anything that's not from an official source is basically not something that you can use for these types of applications. So once you've applied to the EU settlement scheme, hopefully you'll be given either pre-settled or settled status. So as I said before, pre-settled status will be given to those who've lived in the UK for less than 5 years, and settled status will be given to those who've lived in the UK for a continuous 5-year period. What is meant by the 5 years continuous residence is that for 5 years in a row, you've been in the UK, the Channel Islands or the Isle of Man for at least 6 months in every 12-month period. If you've been out of the UK for slightly longer than 6 months during a 12-month period, there are some exceptions. For example, childbirth, serious illnesses, study, vocational training, overseas work postings, compulsory military service of any length, time you spent abroad as a Crown servant or as a family member of a Crown servant, time you spent abroad in the armed forces or as the family member of someone in the armed forces. And if you do have these gaps, please do get in touch with us, because there are some circumstances that you can use as exceptional. So if there are issues in terms of gaps in your residency, please let us know and we can definitely try and help you with that. So something that gets asked quite a lot is, can I visit other countries after I've been given pre-settled or settled status, and how long can I stay outside the UK? Obviously, if you're from a European country or somewhere further afield, you might want to go back home and visit family, visit friends. And the answer basically is that you can leave and you can come back. With pre-settled status, you can spend up to 2 years in a row outside the UK without losing your pre-settled status. But do please remember that pre-settled is the before of the settled status. So you need to still gain 5 years of continuous residence to be granted settled status in the end. So do bear that in mind when you leave the UK. With settled status, you can spend up to 5 years in a row outside the UK without losing your status, so definitely a bit longer. But with pre-settled status, you have to be a bit more careful because you're still trying to build up your 5 years continuous residency during that time period. What documentation will I get? So anybody who's familiar with the Home Office is probably used to getting some sort of biometric card or a letter, something that is definitely reflective of their status. You will get a letter with the application, but you cannot use this letter to prove your status. You can view your status to prove it to someone else online, but you won't be given a physical document. If you're from outside the EU, EEA or Switzerland, you will get a physical document if you don't already have a biometric residence card. The document that you get under the EU settlement scheme proves your rights, but please remember that this only proves your rights in the UK, so don't try and use it abroad somewhere else. And if your details change, such as getting a new passport, you can update your details on the online portal. It's very important to do that because your status does attach to your identity document. What do I do if my application is refused or unsuccessful? So this slide deals with if it's refused or unsuccessful, but there are a lot of cases when the applications are refused or unsuccessful purely because there's been a slight mistake in terms of what has been submitted to the Home Office. So please do contact us if your application is unsuccessful, because there's usually quite an easy fix. It's quite easy to get a few things mixed up in these applications because there's a lot of information online and it can be quite overwhelming. So do get in touch with us. But if there is a mistake in terms of the Home Office, you can either submit a new application, which is free to do, and you can submit that anytime up until the 30th of June 2021. Alternatively, if you believe the Home Office has made a mistake, you can apply for administrative review. It costs £80 and the Home Office will basically review all of your information that you've already given them again for a second time. You can submit new information, but you may as well, in my opinion, just submit a new application. But if you do choose to go down the administrative review route, you will get your £80 returned to you if the Home Office does say, yes, we made a mistake. Alternatively, if you submit new evidence and it's on the basis of that new evidence that they change their minds, you won't get the £80 returned to you. And the third option is that you can appeal the decision to an immigration tribunal. So this can only be done with applications made after 11 p.m. on the 31st of January, which is coming up soon, but it's not relevant yet, but it will be very shortly. Appeals, however, are very expensive. They take a lot longer than the other two options and are very costly. So it's not something that you would do lightly. And because we have a bit of time still until the 30th of June 2021, please do get in touch with Advice NI or someone who has a bit more expertise in this area so that you can get proper advice on the next option for you. And please do get in touch with us. As I say, everything that I've mentioned in the PowerPoint so far, we have very skilled advisors at Advice NI. There's myself and a team of advisors that are very happy to help you with any queries. And if you have any issues, please do get in touch with either the Migrant Centre or Advice NI, because we work as a team. And we'd be very happy to hear from you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a million, Fiona. You took us through a lot of information in a very short period of time for our play. I'm thinking as well now, so it's the particularly relevant to EEA, EU and EEA citizens. They'll have to go down that route if they want to avoid the UK immigration system. But it's also a useful way for Irish and British then to also avoid the complications and the expense of the UK immigration system. So that's the family members of Irish and British living here in Northern Ireland.
Yes, well, if you're British, Anne-Marie, you can't apply to the EU settlement scheme, but certainly if you're Irish and you want to bring a family member over, you would apply, because you would have to basically apply with your family member, and they would use their EU citizenship as the reason for applying to bring a family member over.
Okay.
But for eligible persons of Northern Ireland, it's particularly relevant.
It's particularly. So the Irish citizens then are Irish born in the south in the Republic of Ireland. So
yes, or up north, indeed, like both. If you're born in Northern Ireland and you have an Irish passport, you would probably go down the eligible person of Northern Ireland route. But if you're an Irish citizen from the Republic of Ireland, then yes, you just go down the EU route immediately.
Okay, I get you. So it's the family members of Irish and British in the north, born in the north, and then it's the actual Irish person born in the south. They can apply themselves plus their family members. And I suppose if they don't have family members from other places, they don't need to go down this route. So Irish have the right, and British have the right to live in each other's jurisdictions without any permission. And that's under the Common Traveller. Yeah, and this all gets very tangled up and very messy. But we have other podcasts on the Common Traveller area or that look at it, and we'll have more going down the line. You also mentioned the Frontier Workers Scheme, and yeah, absolutely launched just in the nick of time on the 10th of December. So we have very limited information on that at the moment, on the practical application of it. We have the high level policy information, but we'll go looking for, and we'll have another podcast on the Frontier Workers Scheme. But for now, for today, that's brilliant. You've given us such a good tour, a really in-depth tour in a very short period of time. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. We'll have this information, we'll have links to the podcast, and of course links to and information on lists of organisations who do provide advice and expert immigration advice for free on the BorderPeople website, and of course Advice NI are on that list, top of the list. So if anyone needs more information or links to this, just look at borderpeople.info. So that's all we have time for today. So my thanks to Fiona and to everyone for joining us today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Anne-Marie.